everyone, welcome back to my channel for what is my February reading wrap up. So I'm sitting here feeling very cottagecore today actually to talk to you about the 4 books that I read in February. Yes, I didn't read a ton in February, no shame here, 4 is plenty. I know for lots of other people that would be a lot of books. I just think relatively to what I read the previous month, which was 7. So I read a little bit less in February, and that's just because I found February quite an exhausting month and I was definitely struggling to get everything done. But I really enjoyed most of what I read in February, which is really nice. I got my first 2 5-star books of the year. I got an excellent 4-star book, which is definitely a new favourite and a new introduction within a subgenre that I'm interested in. Then there was a book that was a sort of meh 3-star read. Like, it wasn't a bad book, I just didn't really enjoy it and it didn't really deliver what I was looking for. I will obviously tell you more thoughts in more detail about each book as we go on, however. So let's kick things off with the first book that I finished in the month of February, which is Black Witch Magic by Mila Nix. So this is a book you may actually have already seen me talk about because it was in my top 10 romance novels which I uploaded in February, and I actually finished it a few days before I filmed that video, but was so pleased with what I'd read that I had to include it. Obviously this one is a romance novel, but it has more of a contemporary setting than the typical romances I read, which err towards the historical or the high fantasy. This one was set in a small town in the United States of America, but it wasn't purely contemporary, it was also paranormal because our main female protagonist, Celine, is actually a moon witch, and she's all tied up in a lot of legends and superstition surrounding her town and her family because of a curse that was placed on her and all of the women in her lineage a couple of generations ago. We then also follow Aiden, who is a paranormal investigator for a, well, not television show, it's basically like a YouTube documentary series but in a fictional version of YouTube. And he's actually staying in Celine's town for Christmas visiting a friend. He's a skeptic, he doesn't really believe in the paranormal, he is partnered up with another co-host who does believe, and he on the other hand is the skeptic who goes along saying, I don't believe this, I'm going to prove that it's wrong. However, he's about to have his whole life overturned obviously because Celine is a witch and they are love interests, and they are the cutest love interests. I think they are such a great example of a respectful couple. They have their misunderstandings, they have their secrets initially, but they manage to get through it all in a very adult, communicative way. Something I don't see all the time in romance, I have to say, and I really appreciated that. It was very clear why they were drawn together. They're both introverts, they both enjoy the quiet life, they both enjoy reading, but they also both have the same kind of sarcastic humour that really clicks with one another, and they make the perfect couple. You are definitely rooting for them from their first meeting. It makes complete sense and you just want it all to work out. But on top of the romance plotline, there's also a mystery when a young man that Celine was supposed to be going on a blind date with turns up in a coma, and there's lots of suspicion around what happened to him and whether it was magical or whether it wasn't magical, and who knows. So actually a lot going on there, various different subplots and different genres being combined, and I really enjoyed it because I haven't read a ton of paranormal contemporary romance, and it's actually not something I'm usually drawn to, but this definitely made me think I'd be interested in reading more in the future if it was in line with that. Some of the specifics I particularly enjoyed about this book was 1, the female friendship. There is a fantastic friendship between Celine and her best friend, which I really enjoyed seeing. It added such a layer of realism and complexity to the novel that I appreciated. I also enjoyed that in Aiden and Celine's first sexual encounter everything didn't go smoothly and they were able to get past it and communicate through it. I think it definitely still fell into a bunch of cheesy tropes of this genre, but in the kind of way that you expect and hope for when you pick up a book like this. So definitely an A+ from me. The next book I read, however, was the one that I didn't quite enjoy as much, and it was The Three Mrs. Greys by Shelley Ellis. So I think part of the reason I didn't love this one as much was my expectations. I was expecting a thriller, and for me it doesn't really fall into thriller, or at least not the kind of thriller I look for. It feels more like a domestic drama novel than it does necessarily a thriller. And then equally, one of the things I found most frustrating, and this is both on me but also in the way it's listed and marketed, because I got this for a review on NetGalley and I also checked on Goodreads, but neither place mentions that this is the first book in a series, and you should be prepared going into into this novel to know it's the first in a series, because you get absolutely no satisfaction or resolution from the end of the book. And that felt really dissatisfying to me, because I felt like I'd been sold a standalone thriller. But if you know going in that it's a series and it's more of a domestic drama, you may enjoy it more. And although I wasn't necessarily that invested in the story, because I didn't feel like there was that much suspense or that much mystery, I still sped through it and was quite happy reading it. I just think I'll probably forget about it. The premise is that a man has been shot and ends up in a coma in hospital. His wife then turns up at the hospital to check in on him, only to discover that she's one of 3 wives. So he has married 3 different women. Of course, only the first marriage is actually legal, but none of them have known about one another up until this point, and they're all very different women. I did really enjoy that they were very different women. I loved that representation. I think it was really interesting, and the way that this man took advantage of all of their different personality types was really interesting, and really kind of showed how callous and self-centered he was. However, in an attempt to make them very different, sometimes they felt a little bit caricature-y from a reader's perspective. Overall, however, it was something I was engaged in enough to finish, but it is something that I don't necessarily care enough about to read book 2, so that's why I gave it 3 stars. On the complete flip side, however, I read my first 5-star book of the year, which was also a thriller. So this was A Madness of Sunshine by Nalini Singh. So I think that Nalini Singh is better known as a romance author. She seems to have a ton of romance novels from what I can see on Goodreads, but only 2 thrillers. However, I really hope she writes more thrillers, because I loved this. It's set in New Zealand, and it's about a Maori woman who moved away like over a decade ago to go and live in London, got married, had a very completely separate life from her hometown, which she'd always wanted to escape, but since her husband's death she has decided to move back to her hometown. And when she moves back, she first meets the new police officer, the new local cop, who is our second protagonist, a outsider that has been kind of ostracised to this small town because of some drama he was involved in the police force. And then just to throw everybody's life into upheaval, a young 19-year-old woman from that town goes missing under suspicious circumstances. So that is your premise, and there is like a little bit of romance in there. You can definitely tell that Nalini Singh has written romance, because she does that romantic tension very, very well, and it's obviously between our female protagonist and our cop, as you would have guessed. But there's also a very compelling mystery, and so many different characters from this town, all of whom have their own secrets and are under suspicion for different reasons, and you have lots to guess about and speculate about, and I really, really enjoyed that. My favourite thing about this novel, however, other than it had a fantastic plot and fantastic characters, was the setting. The way that Nalini Singh describes the New Zealand landscape in this book is so rich, so detailed, and so atmospheric. I adored it. I felt like I was there. I felt like it created a very realistic backdrop for the story, and just made me fall in love with her writing. It was so detailed and descriptive. So like I mentioned, I hope that Nalini Singh writes more thrillers in the future, and I'm definitely going to be checking out the other one that she has written. Then luckily for me, we carried on that 5-star momentum with my final read of the month, which was And Then She Ate Him by Tom Denby. So this is a poetry collection, and I am so pleased to say I gave this 5 stars, because as you might have seen from some of my previous wrap-ups, I've been trying a few different new to me poets and not necessarily connecting with them as much as I would have hoped. And this is the first poetry collection by an author I've not previously read that I've fallen in love with in quite some time. I honestly can't think of one even in the past sort of 12 months, maybe more, that I have enjoyed as much as I enjoyed this one. This poetry collection had me literally laughing out loud, but in the most clever, most insightful ways. So it's not incredibly hammy humour, it is the kind of humour where the poet is commenting on some aspect of our current society by pointing out the absolute absurdity of it, and you completely either relate to it or are able to appreciate or understand it from their point of view, and you find yourself laughing out loud because you just cannot believe that is the world we live in and that people behave like this. His writing is so incredibly witty, but also, like I mentioned, insightful, and this poetry collection deals with a ton of themes, including homophobia, the sexualization of queer people by the media. It touches on sexism and lack of respect for your other human being, sayings, which should not be as common as it is. I could not put this collection down, and I also found myself reading entire passages and poems out loud to my boyfriend after I'd read them because I just thought they were so brilliant and I wanted to share them with someone else. So if you are on the hunt for a new poet, I would highly recommend checking this collection out, and I really hope that the poet brings out more in the future so that I can pick them up, because he will now be an auto-buy poet for me. Those, however, are the 4 books that I read in February and my reviews of them. I would love to hear from you if you've read any of them or are interested in reading any of them, and any of your thoughts on what I've said in this video. Plus, as I keep requesting, definitely leave me some more recommendations for your favourite poets and poetry collections that you think I would enjoy. Until next time, however, happy reading, and I'll see you again soon. Bye everyone.